All right, welcome to another edition of Weekend Update for the Sports Guys. This is December 11th. We did not come to you on Monday. We had another commitment we had to take care of. So we're coming to you on a Wednesday, and we're coming to you on the weekend after 5 great championship games. We're going to get into all 5 of them. Really decided a lot of things when it comes to the playoff picture. We also found out who the 4 finalists are for the Heisman race. So we'll talk about that. And we'll get into a little bit of the NFL as well. We have a little bit of an expedited program tonight, but we're real excited to bring you some of this great content. How you doing, Robbie?
I'm doing really well. Excited about how much good sports there was this last weekend and getting to recap it.
Yeah, and there were some great games. I have to say, to me, 4 out of the 5 were really good games, and 2 of them were particularly good. And we'll get into those a little bit later. But really incredible to see this most amazing season I've ever seen in college football come to that kind of conclusion with that many good championship games and really no blowouts. So that was really exciting to see. What were your big takeaways from the weekend?
How excited I am that the college playoff is bringing this much juice to the landscape, the results. There's arguments over who should be number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's like, and it's passionate. It's passionate arguments. It's this team got hosed, at 12.
Yeah. Yep.
It's cool. It's cool. It's much easier to make the top 12 than it is the top 2 or 4.
I'd say because of the 12-team format, because of NIL, because of transfer portal, the talent, as we said several times before, is really spread out. You had way more good games this year. You had way more competitive teams that were in contention. And so it was almost a perfect regular season, in my opinion. I do think we're going to get into the bracket. I think that we might have a little bit of a messed up bracket, and I'm hoping that they correct it next year. And we'll talk about why that is. But for the most part, this was, for the college football fan, a perfect season.
Yeah, I heard a scout talking about how a lot of, in the past, 4 or 5 teams had 5-star blue chip linemen at every position and skill position players. And then the backups behind them were 5-star, but they were freshmen or sophomores. And they were just waiting their turn. And then the guys behind them were maybe a 4-star. But the depth was incredible on these teams.
Mm-hmm.
They could have an injury and you'd never even hear about it because the guy that goes in is a potential All-American. Now, teams are gently and quietly targeting backups who they might have coveted in recruiting in high school or whatever. They have their eyes on people, and there's backdoor channel conversations about transfer portal, and I'm sure not all of it's legal, but there's a lot of backdoor channeling to these backups who are easily convinced to not only become a starter, to come to my smaller Indiana, or I don't mean to suggest Indiana's doing this, but I'm certainly not. But come to my smaller school like that, where you can start versus be a backup for 3 years and hope by year 4 you're going to put enough good tape on there to get drafted high, as opposed to you can come to us in year 2 and be a 5-star. We'll put the spotlight on you. You'll have 3 years worth of tape, and the NFL scouts will feel real comfortable picking you first round. So
you're talking about a kid like SgZ&x, who, he would have gone to Ohio State if anyone knew he was that good. So he goes to a smaller school and just is the best back in the country, So
and you possibly wouldn't know how good he was until year 3 or possibly 4, because they have, running backs in front of them that you have to sit him even though he's good. So if an injury happens, you got SgZ&x sitting there and you're in a great position. But nowadays, the NIL and the transfer portal are pushing the talent around to more teams. But there's less depth in the big blue chip teams. So when you have Ohio State linemen going down and you have Georgia linemen going down and important players getting hurt, they're not replaced by a 5-star guy that's going to probably be in the NFL as well. They're being replaced by a backup 2 or 3-star who has no shot at the NFL, and he's getting exposed when he's playing these great teams
or if you're a top 5 team and your quarterback gets hurt and you have to play with the backup the entire second half in a championship game, you just don't have the depth anymore. You don't have that big guy behind him.
Yeah.
So, although the Georgia quarterback, I thought he played particularly well in that second half. I thought he played really well for a backup.
Well, he played out of his mind considering he's in the program for a long time, but nobody has him on their radar screen. So, quite a nice performance by him. But regardless, that's an interesting concept of the powerhouse teams aren't as deep.
Mm-hmm.
So when they experience injuries, you see a dramatic difference. You saw that with Oregon early on with their offensive line. You've seen that with Ohio State's offensive line. You've seen that all over the place with college and NFL, but especially college. The level of depth is lower for the blue chip teams. So they're more vulnerable to getting knocked off by a Vanderbilt or something like that. So it's interesting. The depth argument is a really important thing to understand in trying to explain a weird loss.
So we'll get into the details of the bracket here in about 5 minutes, but what were your general thoughts when you saw it for the first time? What were your big surprises coming out of it?
I mean, I think that I'm surprised when I look at it that the division winners are not necessarily the best teams. So, clearly 3 of the 4 are not the best team in their division. At least 2 of the 4 are not. So those pathways leading up to them are considerably easier for the people in that bracket.
I think allowing you to get into the playoff when you win your conference is a good thing. I think allowing you to also get a first round bye is a bad thing because what it ends up doing is it ends up skewing the brackets.
I think we're starting to, since this is a first year for this, I think we're learning a lot. And I think what the consensus I'm starting to hear is that people are okay with, generally speaking, an automatic bid for a team that wins the conference, but not an automatic seed. So seeding and bids are different. And I think that's generally what I'm hearing. A lot of football pundits and people who study this are really saying you should reseed it once the 12 teams are in. And I agree with that. I think you have to look at, you have to look at how we got here.
You got to look at record. You got to look at strength of schedule. You got to look
and
at
then there's the whole deserving versus talent. Who you don't want to see a team, one of these blowout finals games like we've seen the last couple of years, where it's not very competitive. So you want to make sure that you end up with the best teams in the final.
Yeah.
And the way you get there is by juggling. Best team is most talented, but might have had a couple weird losses along the way, versus most deserving teams like Boise and anybody who's undefeated, and maybe Indiana certainly deserving based on beating everyone on their record in front of them except for one team. So deserving and talent is not always the same
Is it
thing.
deserving if you play a patsy schedule? So my question is, out of these 12 teams, do we have the top 12 teams? I would say no. I'd say we probably have 9 or 10 of the top 12 teams.
Well, I think Alabama is one of the top 12 teams in the country. So generally speaking, we might have missed a couple of top talent teams, but I do think we got the most deserving teams. So, I think that your record matters. You can only beat what's in front of you. And so I think if you're 12-0 or 11-1, you should be in. And last year was interesting because there was an argument that Florida State shouldn't be in because they deserve it, but they lost their quarterback right before the finals or the championship, and so they went to 11-1, but no quarterback. Let's keep them out. So they're not they're deserving, but they're not talented.
I still feel like the basketball tournament, which they're trying to simulate, it has settled now because it's been in place for so long. You now get pretty close to the best 64 teams, maybe a couple here and there. It's pretty close.
I don't know. I mean,
you get
64 teams. if you have 64 teams, you're going to get all the good ones in. That's
All the good
easy.
ones in. And also you're gonna get the conference champions, and then what they do is the smart way to do it. They wait for all 64 to get their bids, and then they reseed the whole thing. And basically the guy who wins the MAC championship gets a 15 seed, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's what we need here.
I think what happened was last year they went with the best teams, and they kept Florida State out because Florida State was deserving, but their quarterback was out, so clearly they weren't one of the best teams. This year they went the opposite. I think instead of looking at the best teams, they put a little more emphasis on deserving. And so if they kind of go back and forth each year, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm fine with them putting a little more emphasis on beating everyone on your schedule instead of being super talented and beating Murderers Row in the SEC, but losing to Vanderbilt and then to Tennessee and then to someone else.
I still, if I was on the committee, I would still lean towards rewarding people that play tough games, especially early in the season. You know,
Well, I agree, but
LSU playing
that's what I would
USC.
do. I would schedule really hard games, but at the beginning of the year, because if you're Notre Dame, you've come back from that terrible loss, and people aren't even thinking about it anymore. If you're Georgia, you've recovered. If you're some of these teams that
Clemson.
had kind of an early fumble along the way, you can recover. If you have one late, though, you can't recover. You get held out. Look at Miami.
Clemson scheduled Georgia the first game of the year, and they lost.
They got crushed.
And by the way, they didn't have to schedule that game. So my point is that the committee coming out of this year has got to give some guidance. Is Clemson going to get some advantage there for scheduling a really
not
tough
for losing. Anyone can go and lose. You get an advantage if you go and you win, but it does not hurt you as badly if that's a top 4 team. It shows that you're brave enough to take on a difficult challenge, and that counts in your favor. So,
Yeah,
you know, I think there's two things here working against each other. They're not identically relevant, or they're not equally. They don't work together perfectly, and that is deserving teams, which means I beat everyone on my schedule. What am I supposed to do? I'm in the MAC, but I beat everybody. Versus Alabama, who needs to go play Georgia and Texas. You know,
that's right.
and they have 2 losses now or something.
Mm-hmm.
How do you reconcile that? I think you have to understand that that's 2 separate things. That's your program is playing incredibly difficult competition multiple times throughout the season. So you're probably going to have a couple losses. That doesn't mean you should necessarily automatically be below the 12-0 team who has just beaten up on whatever. But it is kind of putting a balance to it, those 2 different opinions. And so this year they slightly tipped it towards deserving versus talent.
My criticisms are very small. I mean, like I said, it was an amazing season. And let's go ahead and dive into the material. We got a lot of stuff for tonight.
Yeah.
All right, so this is our December 11th weekend update. You can see the big headline coming out, and what I think was the best game of the weekend, which is Oregon beating Penn State. Penn State put up a humongous fight. They really impressed me how well their offense played. Both defenses struggled to stop the other offense, and it was a 45-37 win for Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, giving them a first-round bye. What was really head-scratching, and we'll talk about this when we get into the bracket slide, but essentially, why is Oregon's path to the semifinals harder than Penn State's when they beat them in the championship? So we'll talk about that. You also see here the picture of the 4 finalists in the Heisman race. So you have Dylan Gabriel, you have Travis Hunter, you have Cam Ward, and you have Ashton Jeanty. These are the 4 I was thinking were deserving to be in that race. I think these are the 4 finalists, and I do think these are the 4 best players in the college football. What do you think, Robbie?
It's an incredible set of players. I mean, Ashton Jeanty's having the best running back year I can remember in a long time. Not ever, but close to ever. But I think Travis Hunter might be the best college football player we've ever watched, and that's not hyperbole. I'm thinking maybe only him and Herschel Walker or something. Like I don't know how you compare him to someone else because he's doing things that are not comparable to anyone else.
Right.
He is He is a star player in two different positions at the same time, and he's not playing occasionally at one or the other. He's playing both full time. He's
You know what?
leading all kinds of stat categories in both positions. Like,
I
we've never
completely
seen
agree.
that before.
I
Never.
completely agree. So we agree that Ashton Genty in any other year would probably win the Heisman this year, right?
Easily
But the
in any
fact
other
that
year.
he's in Hunter now, here's the amazing thing: if you look at Cam Ward and Dylan Gabriel's numbers, there were several years in the last 10 years that both of them would have won the Heisman with the numbers they're putting up. So you have four guys that I think are deserving. It's just they happen to be in a year with these really unique athletes.
I don't think Ward and Dylan are transformational, ascending above anyone else who's ever played their position kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's not close. The other two stand out, Genty and Hunter. It's not
Mm-hmm.
close because these two are so special, not because it's anything Ward or Dylan did
No,
wrong.
but my point is, if it were a different year, is my point is that these two would be
Yeah,
right
I
up
mean,
there.
we talked about how strong the draft was last year, and it was, but these are two better players than anything that was in the draft last year,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
I can't think of a time we had two players like this in the same draft.
All right, Robbie. Well, it's time for you to pick, man. Who's going to win it?
I got to say Hunter. I think he's the most special athlete that's played football maybe in our lifetime.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I just don't think you can give it to anybody else the way he's played this year and the way he's played two positions, the way he plays 115 snaps a game. Just nobody's ever
He's
seen
an
that before.
unstoppable wide receiver,
Yeah.
and he's a lockdown corner. They don't even throw to
Yeah.
his side of the field.
No, that's right.
That's why he gets almost no tackles, because nobody's even in his quadrant.
That's right. So let's take a look at the 6 championship games I've got on the board here. The first one was Boise UNLV. This was a really solid game. I thought Boise was clearly the better team. They really shut UNLV down, who has a very good offense, by the way. I hadn't seen Boise State play this kind of defense all year. They really were clearly got some NFL talent on the defensive side of the ball as well. But felt very much like they were not going to be denied to get into the playoff, and so they took care of business. What were your thoughts about this Mountain West championship?
It was a team effort. Their defense played really nicely. They had 6 sacks and a pick. Offensively, Genty was awesome. Maddox Madsen was really good. He ran for a touchdown. He threw for a touchdown. No picks. Real solid quarterback. He has risen up my board.
He is good.
I would take him in the NFL.
He's like a
As a
third or fourth rounder. It's like a developmental
Yeah,
guy.
4th round
Yeah.
project. I would love to have him on my team.
Yeah. No, I like him a lot. This was a really solid win because UNLV is a very good team. I mean, this
Yeah.
wasn't just like a fluke. So
Yep.
this was a solid championship game. I was proud of Boise.
Genty had he tied LaDainian Tomlinson for 5 70-plus yard touchdowns, the most in NCAA history.
Actually, his touchdown in this game was really fun to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
just he's so shifty. You give him a little tiny hole and he's gone.
He had a
So he was had no time.
75-yard touchdown.
Yeah, that was such a sweet run. So yeah, no, you're exactly right. He's doing things nobody's ever seen before at the position.
Yep.
It's amazing. So our next game was Army in the American Athletic Championship, or the AAC. They cap off their incredible best season in 42 years with an 11-1 record and 7-0 in the conference. And they knock off a very good Tulane team in the final. And really just kind of took care of business, ran it down their throats, got a little bit of passing going, played good defense. What were your thoughts about this game?
I think it's incredible how powerful Army is at running the ball. Like, it's obvious when you look at their scoring and their stats and their wins this year, but I think we need to take a second to internalize it. They're bulldozing people, and you know it's coming, okay? Their quarterback, Bryson Daly, threw the ball 2 times for 17 yards.
Right.
Otherwise, he was running the ball or handing the ball off.
Just incredible.
And it's absolutely amazing. He had 126 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's your quarterback?
Yeah.
He's a running bulldozer.
Don't
And
they
then
feel like the
he's
old
also
days?
handing the ball off to Kanye Udoa, who had 158 yards and a touchdown as well. So they're just – you don't know where the ball is going. You know they're running it, but you just don't – you can't figure out if the quarterback's taking it that way or if the running back's coming up the middle. It's amazing because you know they're running and you can't stop it.
Don't they feel like an old school version of what we used to call the wishbone offense back in the day
Yeah.
when you had Oklahoma and Texas?
Yeah, it's kind of like
And
Oklahoma.
they would just run at each other, and they'd both throw the ball like 5 times each, and that's it. And otherwise, it was just running the wishbone and pitching it, and it just feels like a real return to old school running the ball. It's kind of fun to
Tulane
watch.
special teams was a little shaky. They made a bunch of errors.
Yeah, you did.
They had some some snafus on missing field goals.
Tulane kind of collapsed down the stretch because they were sitting at
Yeah.
9-1, and they lost.
They looked like the moment was a little too big for them for some reason.
A little bit. Yeah, I was really proud of Army. I'm so happy about the year that they've had. They get to go play Navy next weekend for their 13th game, which is
I
kind of
love
like
the service academies. It's just
kind of
so
like
cool.
their bowl game anyway. So
Yeah.
it'll be fun to watch. Let's go to the next one. We got Oregon, Penn State. I already mentioned this. This was, in my opinion, the most fun game to watch the whole weekend. Big Ten.
Yeah, it was.
I thought it'd be pretty low scoring. I thought it'd be like a 24-21 type game. And it ended up being just an absolute shootout, especially in the first half. They were both rolling up yardage, rolling up points. Nobody could stop anybody. Both quarterbacks playing at a really high level. Both teams running the ball. Penn State was using their tight ends like I've never seen this whole year. They were just gashing Oregon's defense with their tight ends. And
both
really
teams were gashing each other's defenses.
Yeah, that's right.
Each team had 1 sack each. Like, that's not very much. That's not a lot of pressure.
And Oregon has so many weapons that essentially all Gabriel has to do is get in their hands, and then it's all run after catch. They just have so much run after catch. And then go the distance every time they touch it. So, man, that was an exciting game to watch. And
Tez Johnson had 181 yards receiving and a touchdown.
Oregon was clearly
it was a balanced attack, an absolute demolition. But both teams demolished the other team's defense.
Oregon was clearly the better team in this game, and they were clearly the best team the entire season. I think they're deserving #1 seed, which is why when we get to the bracket, we'll talk about how they really did get kind of screwed in the by the committee. So we'll talk about that. But this was a great game.
I'll tell you, I watched this one, and Dylan Gabriel showed me more in this game than what I've seen some of this year. I think he's an NFL talent. I've been on the fence about him a lot this year, actually, because I know how much talent he has around him. And I think a lot of these Alabama quarterbacks get to the NFL and they struggle because the athletes they're throwing to in Alabama are superior to the ones defending them. And so the quarterback is the beneficiary of that. And I've been kind of hesitant to think Gabriel's really that good. But this game, for some reason, watching him just making really good decisions, I feel like that I could hang my hat on.
Do you know why he's NFL? He can make all the throws, and he made all the throws in this game. I mean,
I liked his decision making.
He goes over the middle. He goes seam route. He goes go route. He goes flag route. He can throw every single route, and he throws it in a place where only his guy can catch it, which is just.
He had 4 touchdowns and 0 interceptions.
Yeah. So he makes all the throws on the route tree, and when you can do that, you're going to be a pro. That's just as simple as that. So they definitely were deserving. Next game, we have another really good game. We watched this game as well. Very low scoring, 6-3 at halftime. Texas. Both defenses were really dominating the other offenses. Georgia, of course, gets their quarterback banged up and hurt, and the backup has to come in for the rest of the game. So everybody just assumed Texas would take care of business. Instead, as I've been saying this entire season, and I'm going to stick to it, I just don't think Ewers is that good. And I think he's really degraded and regressed the entire season, gotten worse and worse, to the point where I thought the Georgia backup quarterback was better than Ewers in this game. So I don't know. I don't know if Ewers has worked himself out of getting drafted altogether, but he's definitely not a first-round pick. And I don't know where he's going to go in the draft, but I'm not impressed. I think he's slow. He makes bad decisions. He runs himself into sacks. He doesn't throw the ball downfield very much. Their offense is not dynamic at all. It's lots of flat routes. And Georgia really had no business winning this game with a backup quarterback, but they did because they were just a little bit better.
Yeah. They got rolled in the first half, and it was only 6-3. So that told you that Texas was not taking full advantage of how many opportunities they had. And Georgia's defense was bend but don't break, and they were hanging in there.
And I saw a lot of people picking Texas to win the national championship after this game, saying essentially this was their wake-up call and all this kind of stuff.
There's been kind of a misnomer that Etienne was this huge force throughout this game. When he came on, when the backup quarterback went in, Etienne came alive, and that's when he really started to do his damage. And
he did look
was
good.
The difference.
He did look really good.
But I don't think Georgia's running game has been very impressive this year. So, they were getting waxed in the first half, but the score was close, and so they really could give the speech, "Hey, we're playing terrible football and we're only down 6-3. We can do this." And then their quarterback gets hurt. Their backup comes in and gives them a real spark. And then they start handing the ball to Etienne, and they kind of took it to Texas.
That was the best game I saw Etienne play. He was fantastic, especially the second half. But don't you think Kirby Smart also outcoached Sarkisian? It just felt like it was a coaching mismatch with the experience that Kirby Smart has the last 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the kicking game, Texas missed 2 field goals. I think that was very discouraging for their team. They only lost by 3, so I feel like it wasn't so much a coaching thing. Kirby did a good job of keeping everyone calm. They were getting really blown off the ball in the first half, but they were bending and not breaking, and they held it. And then they came out with a new fire with the second quarterback. And I think Beck is not an NFL quarterback.
Beck is not NFL, and I don't think Ewers is either. I wouldn't.
And I don't think Ewers is either. I think both quarterbacks were holding their team back from taking control of this game.
By the way, I think both quarterbacks have been holding their teams back the entire season, which is why I haven't put either of these teams in as one of the favorites to win it the whole thing, because their quarterback play is just subpar. The backup quarterback for Georgia was the best quarterback on the field. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So still a really good game. It was exciting, not very high scoring. But, if you love SEC football and good defenses, this was your game.
It was an exciting game. I enjoyed it. It wasn't very high scoring, but it was definitely exciting. And
so much NFL talent on that field on both sides of the ball on both teams. All the linemen. I mean, a lot of NFL talent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
And Texas's defense is legit.
It's true.
Like, they don't get much credit nationally for some reason, and their defense is really good because their offense is real challenged sometimes.
So probably the most interesting and surprising game of the day for me was Clemson beating SMU. We knew that Clemson had to win this game to go to the playoff, or else they were going home and going to a bowl game. They came out like gangbusters, leading 24-7 at half. SMU just looked a little bit like the moment was a little too big for them or something. But then something happened at halftime where SMU woke up. They put in some adjustments, and they almost pulled this game out. It was really close. SMU really showed the quality they have in the second half. I still think SMU is the better team, but Klubnik had a really great game. Of course, Dabo's got a great staff, and they found a way to get this one over the finish line and get themselves into the playoff. What was your thought about the ACC championship?
I mean, it was a really good game. SMU almost fought their way back in. It really felt like Clemson was controlling it. They were up 24-7 at one point. It felt like Clemson was going to run away with this, and then SMU kind of came back out at halftime and just kind of fought their way back in it, and then had a really big fourth quarter. I think Klubnik played well. I think he threw the ball too many times, but
I will say, if you look at his season, he really was disappointing in the first half, and he's been really good the second half.
he's been solid.
He's been one of the best 3 or 4 quarterbacks in college football in the second half. He really has, with his legs and his arm.
I was impressed with SMU's fight. They brought a lot of fight to this. They were down big, and they just said, "We're going to fight our way back in this." And
you notice they had a running reputation most of the season, but the last couple of weeks they can really throw the ball.
Yeah,
I mean, they've got a lot of good receivers.
Yeah, Jennings had 304 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick, and he also had 35 rushing and a touchdown, 35 yards rushing. So
this was
he's
really
kind of a dual threat a little bit.
Yep, this was a solid game. It was a lot of fun to watch. Didn't know really who was going to pull it off there at the end, and Clemson just got over the finish line, which, by the way, gave the ACC 2 teams in the playoff, which I was happy about.
Yeah,
obviously.
That helped a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So the last championship game we're going to talk about, Luke's Iowa State Cyclones, unfortunately came out on the short end of this game. They just could not stop the team that's been the hottest team in the country the last 6 weeks, and that's Arizona State. This is a team, Arizona State, that was picked to be last in the Big 12 at the beginning of the season, and were essentially told they were devoid of talent. And they've just been going like gangbusters. And as you can see now, have won the Big 12. Now they're in the playoff, got a chance at the national championship game. And I think in any other year, Iowa State would be going, but they just ran into a buzzsaw. So what are your thoughts about this game?
It's Cam Scabado.
Yeah.
Scadabo. I've been watching him all year. I didn't know much about him prior to this year. I think he's been well known as a good running back, but I think he should be 5th in the Heisman voting. I mean, he's so good. He's getting 2 touchdowns a game. He's an absolute bulldozer. He reminds me of John Riggins or something.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I watched this week high school video of him just trucking people and just carrying people downfield. I mean, he's been doing this his whole football career.
Would you be happy if your NFL team got Scabado at the next level? I would.
I think you gotta take him. I mean, you got Dylan Sampson, Scadabo, and Genty. You have to get one of those 3. you know,
that's right. Yeah, he's fantastic.
There are some real stars coming out this year, no question.
Arizona
this is
State,
a good draft, just not necessarily for quarterback.
So here's the question: what is the best story of the year as we wrap up college football? Okay, what's the best story of the year? Is it Boise State with Ashton Genty? Is it Colorado, who just came up short from the playoff, but were much improved from last year with these special talents that are all going to go first round? Is it Arizona State, who was picked last in their division and ends up winning their division and goes to the playoff? Incredible story.
I think it's Indiana.
Is it Indiana? Is it Army?
I think it's Indiana.
Is it SMU? SMU could be considered an amazing story, but just alone. So
yeah, there's a lot of good ones, to be honest.
Or is it all 5 or 6 of those are just incredible stories?
Yeah, there's a lot of good stories.
Yeah, that's really. It was a great championship weekend. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah.
As I said before, this was the best college season I've ever seen before. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this quote from Cam Newton on his podcast. He said, "Nobody wants to see SMU. Nobody wants to see Arizona State. Nobody wants to see Indiana, and nobody wants to see Boise State." So this is a guy coming from, a guy who won the national championship with Auburn. He's an SEC guy all the way. He wants to see 5, 6, 7 SEC teams in there. So what is your take on this this quote from Cam? He likes to stir it up a little bit.
Well, he's making the argument of always pick the 12 best teams. According to who, though? I heard the ACC commissioner saying, why is it the SEC beats itself up, but nobody recognizes that the ACC beats itself up and everyone laughs at the ACC? I think it's in the eye of the beholder. I think you have to take into account the 2 different schools of thought. Deserving means you beat all 12 teams on your schedule. And if you beat all 12 teams, you're deserving of one of the 12 spots.
Mm-hmm.
What he's talking about is no one wants to see SMU or Arizona State or Indiana. They're not the most talented teams. The most talented teams are 2 and 3 loss teams. I don't know that you can make that
So
assumption.
you think there's two schools of thought. There's one that you said is all about talent and the best team.
Yeah.
So if that were the case, Alabama would be in there.
Alabama would be in.
Whereas you're saying deserving, but who decides that? Who decides deserving? So that's the
Well,
question.
deserving by they beat everyone on their schedule. You can't argue with it. So it's almost less
But then does it encourage you to
objective
do a
than
soft schedule?
these 2 losses aren't as bad as those 2 losses.
But then does it encourage me to go get a soft schedule every year to make sure I'm 11-1?
I think you balance it. You don't just go by the most deserving, but you do most deserving and most talented, and you try and get some mix so that you can represent both schools of thought. I think that's what this playoff is.
Well,
and while I don't agree with the seeding, I like the 12 teams. Me personally, if I would make one change, I would add Alabama. The problem is I don't know who I would remove.
There's a third school of thought you haven't mentioned yet, and I think it might be what he's talking about here. And I know it's what the head of college football is thinking, which is TV ratings. TV ratings is the third school of thought, which is let's pick the 12 teams that are going to get us, bonkers ratings on CBS and ABC. And what he's saying, I think, here is that I'd rather have Alabama over SMU. I'd rather have Alabama over Arizona State, purely because you're going to get a much higher rating. So that's a third school of thought.
I think he's arguing that the talent level is not something people want to see. So they're kind of connected. It's brand and talent together that's lacking in these teams. And I think it's an argument of, I know what the 12 best teams are, and the committee was wrong, kind of thing.
I mean, the committee and the commissioner of college and the commissioner of college football are fist pumping when a Clemson gets in there, because Clemson's a big brand and they can pull a lot of viewers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think,
and they like when there's equal representation of all the conferences. It looks like a more legitimate champion. If you had 12 people in the playoff, but 9 of them were SEC, it wouldn't look that legitimate. Even if all 9 were deserving, you'd have to say, it didn't really represent the whole country.
mm-hmm.
It's better when the ACC is represented.
So you're saying
Big 10 and the Big 12 and the SEC, and then there's another little bit of representation outside those conferences.
So you're saying with those 3 schools of thought, we've got to thread the needle somehow, and we have to balance all 3 of them in the same.
Yeah,
and that's tough to do.
That's really hard, especially when they contradict each other a little bit.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Like, what do you base Alabama being one of the top 12 most talented teams on? They lost several times.
You base it on they were 3-1 against top 10 teams.
I know.
That's what you base it on.
So and you Indiana, do have a good argument for it.
And Indiana only played one top 10 team and lost. So
it can be challenged. It can be argued against. So that's the fun of the 12-team playoff. That's the fun of the super conferences. I mean, the SEC adding Texas and Oklahoma. My goodness.
Yeah. I know, it's just brutal. I know. Drop us a comment down below, guys, and tell us, do you agree with Cam Newton? Do you agree with Rob and me that the other 2 schools of thought have to be balanced? We really love to hear from you guys on what you think is the right way to go here. So let's talk about winners of the week. We've got Clemson, of course, comes out of nowhere. They were written off for the playoff a couple weeks ago. Somehow they pulled this out of a hat. I still think it's absolutely incredible that they're going. Arizona State, of course, wins really big against Iowa State and wins their conference and goes to the playoff. Georgia, of course, finds a way to win it in overtime against Texas. Really big game there in the SEC. Penn State played particularly well in a loss against Oregon, and looks like they have a really nice, easy path to the semifinals at least.
We'll see. I know that's the school of thought. I'm a little skeptical about how easy some of these actual paths are. I think that some of the teams that are being dismissed are real feisty. They have good coaches. All these teams have good coaches, good quarterbacks.
But you have to say Penn State loses that game, and then you look at their bracket, and it's one of the easier paths.
It looks easy, but it might not be. I think these are the top 12 teams, and I would have seeded them differently. But, you know, I heard
But
somebody saying that Texas could win it all because of their bracket, and that
but,
might be right.
but
Yeah,
you have to say Penn State. That was the first time, in my opinion, that they looked like a top 5 team against Oregon.
they looked amazing.
They looked
Yeah,
like they belonged as a top 5 team.
their defense was a little bit surprisingly
So,
weak,
so I
but
don't usually put a team in the winners of the week when they lose the week before, and they did. But I put them in there because not only did they get really good seeding, but secondly, it was the first time they really looked like their ranking. They looked like they really belong. So next
yeah,
one's, of course, Oregon, the number 1 seed, undefeated, 13-0. And then, of course, we've got Boise State with Ashton Jeanty and the boys who get in by winning their conference as well. So any thoughts or concerns about any of these winners of the week?
no, they had great weeks. They had great weeks. The Georgia win over Texas was a wild one. Arizona State just smashing their opponents the last several weeks. They're a hot team. You don't want to play them right now.
Remember we talked
Penn
about last
State
week?
looked great. Oregon looked like champions.
Remember
And
we talked last week about fear the fork? Arizona State, fear the
the
fork.
amazing thing about the Boise State win was they were jack in the box with 9 people,
Yeah,
and Genty was still getting his.
I know.
Like,
I know. He's just so good.
it's almost like you can't stop him even when you have 9 in the
Yeah,
box. You
I
can't
know.
stop him.
So losers of the week, I've got Ohio State there, even though they did get into the playoff, mainly because they missed the Big Ten championship game. Feels like they should have been there if they're truly one of the top 2, 3 teams in the country. And they kind of go limping into these playoffs with not much
Yeah.
offense, and it's kind
They don't
of
have a lot of momentum.
it's head scratching. Their quarterback's not playing well. Their offensive line is really banged up. They've got 2 starters out right now, and so I don't know. I'm not sure about Ohio State. We'll see if they can pull it together here.
I'm
As-
not thrilled with Will Howard.
no, he's not playing well. They should have kept Kyle McCord with Syracuse.
And they're not running the ball very well.
SMU is a loser of the week, although they did somehow make it into the playoff over Alabama, but they did lose that game to Clemson that everyone thought they should have won. Iowa State, of course, they've been in the winners and losers of the week many times this season. This time, unfortunately, they're on the loser bracket and get knocked out permanently out of the playoff by Arizona State. Texas loses to Georgia for the second time this year. Fortunately for them, they didn't look quite as bad as they did last time when they got blown out, but still look very ineffective on offense. And Ewers just looks totally over his skis, I guess you
Yeah,
could
they
say.
have real concerns there. They're
Yeah.
not running the ball well, and Ewers is not looking good at all, especially under pressure. The reason Beck and Ewers look so similar is they look great against the bad teams,
Mhm.
so they have a lot of good stats,
That's right.
and they get dubbed captains and leaders of the team and all this. But you put them under pressure, and they fold, and the really good quarterbacks are not folding like they are.
That's right.
So I'm not
Next,
saying they can't be worked with by an NFL coaching staff, but they do not look ready for the NFL is what I'm saying.
next loser of the week, Miami. They were praying that somehow they would get into the playoff, even though they didn't make the ACC championship game. Obviously, that didn't happen. They might have gone if Clemson had lost. It would have come down to Alabama, Miami. I still think Alabama would have gotten in, but they were really kind of praying that they were going to get in and did not. So Miami had a fantastic year and will go to a bowl game now. And then, of course, Alabama is the last loser of the week because they were the last one left out of the playoff and felt like they deserved it. Any thoughts on any of these?
I think those all had some disappointments this week. Obviously, SMU is still in it. They're rocking and rolling. They had a really tough game. They almost got it done, and Clemson hung on. And Texas is still in it. Ohio State's still in it, but Texas and Ohio State are kind of limping in, sort of with questions emerging about important positions on their team. And so we'll see.
Ohio State is trying
Still
to
the best
play.
roster in football.
Ohio State is trying to play a brand of football that doesn't match their roster. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to play a ground and
Yeah,
pound when they have offensive linemen out and when they have 3 NFL wide receivers, 2 of whom
that's
are going
right.
to be first
That's on
round.
the offense coordinator to get that fixed.
And somehow this quarterback can't get them the ball. And it's really head scratching. to figure out why they're playing that way.
Yeah, he's not playing well.
So the college football playoff bracket, this is it. It's final. You can see the first round, you've got December 21st in Austin, Texas. Clemson takes on Texas in their home state at Texas. So that's going to be a home game for Texas. That's going to be really tough for Clemson to win that game. I personally think Texas will find a way to squeak that one out. And then they'll go on to play Arizona State in the quarterfinals. Tennessee takes on Ohio State in Columbus at Ohio State. So that's a really tough game for Tennessee to play, even though Ohio State has not been playing well. I really personally believe Tennessee is going to win that game. I think Ohio State's not playing great. And Tennessee is starting to come on. Their defense is really, really good. But I think it'll be a great game. I'm looking forward to watching it. Whoever wins that game gets to go take on the number 1 seed, Oregon, in the Rose Bowl. So a lot of people think that the reason they gave Oregon such a brutal draw here is because they wanted a fantastic Rose Bowl with big ratings. So they wanted to make sure they had a really good opponent.
It's pretty good rationale, too.
Exactly. Next game is SMU, goes on the road to College Station and plays Penn State at their place. That's a really tough assignment for SMU to try to win that game in Happy Valley. That's just tough. I think Penn State wins that game pretty easily and goes on to take on Ashton Genty and Boise State. And then Notre Dame takes on Indiana. I think this will be the end of the Cinderella story for Indiana. I think Notre Dame is too powerful for them and will win. It will probably be a pretty good game, though. I think a touchdown type game. And then Notre Dame will go on to face Georgia in the quarterfinals. Any thoughts about this bracket? And I know we've beat it up a little bit already, but why in the world does Oregon have the toughest draw to the semifinals?
I don't know, but I think Ohio State's going to win. I think they're going to face Oregon.
You do?
That's going to be an incredible matchup.
I like Tennessee in that game. I'll just go on record now. I think Tennessee's playing better than Ohio State right now. What about Clemson, Texas? Who do you like in that one?
I like Texas.
Okay, me too. Penn State, SMU.
I think it's kind of a toss-up. I'm not really sure about that one. I feel like people are definitely getting on the Penn State bandwagon. The way they played against Oregon, they deserve it. But SMU is real tough.
They are.
And their defense is better than I thought it was. And
I just don't think an ACC school can play with a top 5 a Big Ten school. I just don't. And I'm an ACC guy, but I just think that Penn State's going to wear them down in the second half.
They have a nice balanced attack, running and throwing. Their defense is tough. I think it's really easy to overlook them.
They have those tight ends that are really hard to guard, and they just kind of wear you down.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I've got Penn State in that game. What about Notre Dame, Indiana?
I'm kind of leaning towards SMU. Notre Dame.
Okay. So then what about that next round, Notre Dame, Georgia?
I think Georgia takes that one.
Okay. I want to know if Beck is fully healthy or not before I make that decision. I think that if he is, Georgia will find a way because I think Kirby Smart is the better coach. So they'll win if they're fully healthy. If the backup's playing for Georgia, I don't think he can beat Notre Dame. So what about Penn State, Boise?
Well, I was thinking SMU might pull that off.
Okay.
So I think Boise goes on.
Okay.
And beats SMU.
What about you had Ohio State, Oregon?
Yeah, I think Oregon.
Yeah, I think Oregon's going to play Tennessee, and I think Oregon will win that game. They'll make it into the semis on a tougher game than they really should have had as the number 1 seed. What about Texas, Arizona State?
I think Arizona State, the hotter team, might knock off the more talented team.
Okay.
So I'm saying Arizona State for the upset.
Well, guys, in a future weekend update, we'll come and talk to you about these games. They're going to be really fun to talk about. And then as these rounds progress, we'll bring you all the news that comes through here. These are all going to be really fun to watch. I'm really looking forward to it. Can't wait. Have my popcorn ready.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
See the big trophy they're going for there on the right. So it's going to be really a great tournament. So we talked a little bit about down to the 4 Heisman finalists. We both agree Travis Hunter's going to win it. Any other thoughts about this? And if you don't, then I'm going to ask the viewers to do a challenge.
No, I think we touched on it that Genty's numbers are unbelievable, but he's getting beaten out by a once in a lifetime player.
Well, guys, go ahead and drop us a comment down below. This is this week's viewer challenge. We're really looking forward to your comments next week. Who will win the Heisman? Give us which of these four guys you think is going to win it. Does Genty have a chance to upset Hunter? That'll be a big question. So we'll look forward to your mailbag responses there.
Does he have a chance? Yes.
Let's talk about this interesting story. Bill Belichick has handed UNC a 400-page manifesto as to everything he wants done. He calls it his organizational Bible. It has structure and payment plans and staffing choices, and locks in his son as the next UNC coach after he retires, and has all kinds of stuff, what he wants his pay to be. I don't think I've ever seen someone do the kind of demands that he's done here. He's written up this huge Bible that he wants done, and UNC has essentially agreed to it. And so he has not signed anything yet. This is not 100% done, but it's looking like it's done. It's looking like the negotiations are happening and that these schools waiting for his decision.
I got to imagine there's a couple sticking points for either alumni or administrators who are not sure they want to sign off on Belichick's son being the heir apparent or what have you.
So do you think a couple things? One, do you think he can work with college kids, or do you think they're just going to drive him crazy?
Well, he's dating one, so.
No, she's 24, but
no, yeah. I'm just kidding.
We're going to talk about her in a minute. Right now, we're talking about his work.
I think the only reason he would take this is he wanted a new challenge. He's done everything there is to do in the NFL. So I think he's saying, I want to see what it's like to coach college kids, to recruit a 16 and 17-year-old, to put a 19-year-old on the field and know that he's nervous and he's a kid, but
I think the only reason he would take this is a couple of things. One, you're right. This is not on his resume. He doesn't have great college coach on his resume, and he looks at, Sark and Saban and all these guys that have that on their resume. So I think that's one. But I think number two, I don't think he would have taken this job except that college football has changed, and it's become a pro league. Let's be honest.
Yeah. You can treat them a little more like pros. If the kicker misses a kick, but you're paying him $500,000 a year, you can bench him and just say, we're paying you to hit that, and you didn't, so now you're on the bench.
Right.
If it's just a scholarship kid, it's just that looks a little more harsh.
And then my third feeling on this is that, he had been in discussions with the Bears. And, of course, we know the rumor that this woman you see here he's dating right now is 24 years old, is the ex-girlfriend of Caleb Williams, who's the quarterback of the Bears, and who has a clause in his contract that he can veto any coach. And so Caleb Williams might not want to be coached by the guy who's dating his ex-girlfriend. So what are your thoughts about that crazy drama situation?
Yeah, when I dropped that to you and Henry last week, and it got quite an incredible reaction because it was kind of shocking. But it makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't want to be coached by a guy who's dating my girl who broke my heart, my ex-girlfriend. That gets too weird. So I don't think that's a perfect fit. I think you either bring Belichick in and get rid of Caleb Williams, or you keep Caleb Williams and you don't go down the Belichick road. It's pretty simple.
What do you think about this negotiation tactic he's using to guarantee Stephen Belichick will be named
I don't know.
head coach in waiting?
You'd have to say if Carolina's in a relatively desperate situation if they accept this manifesto.
But it seems like before he goes on to his full retirement that he wants to find a way to make sure Stephen becomes a head coach. That's what it looks like to me. He wants to leave that legacy.
I think he wants a new challenge. I think he's semi-retired. He's broadcasting. He realizes broadcasting is not really his passion, even though he's really good at it. Actually,
He's actually entertaining.
I really like listening to his points of view on
Yeah.
players. He's very fair.
Agreed.
He's not mean and on to Cincinnati. He's very thoughtful, and
Right.
I've liked him as a commentator.
So we're supposed to find out in the next 24 hours, will he be UNC's next coach? What's your prediction?
I feel like there's too much that can go wrong with a 400-page manifesto and all the NIL stuff and college being complicated, and he has no college experience. But I'd say it's close to 50-50 right now.
Maybe he can get his girlfriend free tuition in the grad school.
I'm seeing memes all over the place where the idea that Belichick can't recruit young college talent is incorrect, and they show a picture of her.
He can recruit young talent.
Young college.
I mean, he's only 42 years older than she is, so
It's crazy.
All right, let's take a look at some of the NFL scores. We had the Lions beat the Packers in what was a really great game. I really enjoyed that game a lot. It was a Thursday night game. Any takeaways on that one?
Well, Dan Campbell did it again with fourth downs.
Yeah.
He's a wild man.
I mean, it burned them last year in the playoffs, and I just worry about him. I know he was 4 for 5 on fourth downs in this game, but I mean, one of the times he went for it on his own 30-yard line. He just gets a little reckless sometimes.
They're fourth in the league on fourth downs. They've converted 15 of 22.
I didn't think the last fourth down was necessary. They were down at the 25-yard line of the opponent.
I agree.
With 30 seconds left. I don't know. He wants that.
I like a lot of what he does. He scares me on situational football just with fourth downs, really.
Yeah.
I think he's going to make a catastrophic error that's going to be insurmountable in the playoffs.
This felt like a playoff game. It was a playoff game because they're both going to make the playoffs. Packers are just a notch below the Lions right now, and so are the Vikings. Those three teams might be the best three teams in the NFC, along with the Eagles, in their same division.
But you know what I do like about Detroit? Obviously, their lineup is loaded and chock full of talent. They have tremendous amount of injuries, and they just next man up and they keep going.
Yep.
But they're good on third down. They were 7 of 15 on third down, and Detroit was Green Bay was 1 of 5.
That's right.
So they're really putting pressure on a defense when they keep staying on the field and staying on the field and staying on the field. They just keep pounding down your throat. They have all these talented players running around. It just, you wear out a defense.
So Jaguars beat the Titans in a putrid game. I don't think it's even worth discussing, but I did mention the score. The Jets lose to your Dolphins in an overtime game. That was really a fantastic game. I really enjoyed watching that one. Aaron Rodgers had his best day of the year. He had been kind of written off, and he was playing really good football that day. Devontae Adams had his first impact game for the Jets. But in the end, the Dolphins were just too good, and their offense was really clicking. Still a little concerned about the Dolphins' defense. It's pretty soft, but Dolphins really have been playing a lot better at the end of the season.
Yeah. Miami was good in the red zone again. They're starting to get to be a good red zone team, which is nice. That means that you're converting touchdowns instead of kicking field goals and giving up opportunities. So, I think it was a good game. It's always a good game between these two. Tua played a nice game, 2 touchdowns, no picks. So it's a great in-division rivalry. The Jets definitely had moments where it looked like they were playing better, and then it would swing, and there was a moment. It was a momentum game.
I enjoyed that game a lot.
I enjoyed it. I love the result, of course. But,
Vikings beat the Falcons 42-21. Kirk Cousins continues his swoon at the end of the year. He's had 4 really, I don't know if you can say they're horrific. They may be worse than horrific with another 4 picks. He just looks like they need to bench him. I'd maybe let him sit, watch for a while, let Penix play.
The wheels are coming off.
They're trying to make the playoffs. They used to be with a 2-game lead in their division. Now they're in second place. Tampa's coming on, and the Vikings just look fantastic. Sam Darnold Not only is
Darnold was 22 of 28, 347 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks.
and all his weapons were going crazy. I mean, they all had
That's
big
one of the
impact.
best games of
Yeah,
the entire year by any quarterback.
that's right. So now they're debating, they can't let him go. Obviously, he's playing too well.
No.
They have JJ McCarthy. So now the question is, do you just franchise him and keep him
Yeah,
for
I would.
another year?
Let's
Franchise
stay really strong at quarterback, and then when one guy gets a little dinged up, you're in great shape.
Franchising means that they give him 41 million, which would be a bargain compared to the 60 million the other guys are getting. 1 year
I think
bridge.
so. If you're going to get that kind of production out of him, he gets 1 year at that price, and it
You're at
won't kill
41
you
million.
too much.
Yeah.
You still got your backup at a rookie deal.
Yep.
You haven't seen much of him yet, but you stay with a winning hot hand,
I
and
think
then
so.
you always have a good option to go to if he starts to falter.
That's what I would do if I were the GM. I'd franchise him for
Yeah.
1 year and pay him the 41 million. And that's actually
And
kind
if
of
he
a bargain.
starts doing it again, then you lock him up with a good contract, and you try and trade JJ McCarthy.
But man, the Vikings are good right now. I mean, they might be the number 1 seed if they find a way to beat the Lions here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Saints in another putrid game of two teams that both deserve to lose, 14-11. Not even really worth discussing. My Panthers come up short again, although they've been 4 weeks in a row playing really solid football.
4 weeks in a row, they had moral victories.
Moral victory. And what was funny is they had the winning score with a perfect throw by Bryce Young to his second-year guy, Leggett, right in his hands, and he drops it at the goal line. It would have been a touchdown in the win, 23-22. So this is nothing that Bryce Young is doing. He's playing definitely way better than he did last year, but he's playing so well that he really should be winning these games.
It was a pretty remarkable difference in styles too. Bryce Young was really throwing nicely, and Chuba had a decent game, but overall the Eagles were running the ball and the Panthers were throwing the ball.
Eagles are running, Panthers are throwing, but I will say that the Panthers really frustrated the Eagles a lot of the day.
Yeah.
Their defense played really well.
They had 4 sacks.
And so the Eagles came out of this game really kind of lucky to win this game and didn't play particularly well. And I'm really happy about the Panthers' overall performance. So,
yeah, me too.
Like you said, moral victories every week. Steelers take care of business against the Browns. The Browns are just absolutely putrid now. They've completely fallen apart under Winston.
Steelers, I heard somebody say that Deshaun Watson is so bad at football that he's a better person than he is a football player now.
Oh my God. What was interesting in this game was Russell Wilson actually had kind of an average game for him lately. He's been really tearing it up. They just had kind of an average game. He was okay. But they're starting to get their running game going. Their defense had a really great day, and Steelers take care of business, man.
Jameis did his thing again with some good plays and then some bonehead picks.
He'll throw a touchdown and then he throws 2 picks.
And they're devastating picks.
That's why he's not in Tampa anymore.
I know.
So next game, Buccaneers, clearly the better team against the Raiders. Raiders are really depleted at this point. Raiders had their quarterback get hurt. They do have Brock Bowers, who's their best player now, but Buccaneers in the playoff push, clearly the better team here. Anything you can take from this one?
By far. Not really, just kind of a total domination overall. Yards 420 to 286. Yeah. That just kind of tells the story. They were just better in most every area. They were a little better except for Brock Bowers. So
that's right. Yep, that's true. So
Baker's,
this is really
playing nicely.
This is a really surprising game. Everyone's been talking about how the Seahawks are a little better than anyone's given them credit for, and they've just been kind of solidly winning almost every week. And they did it again to a pretty good Cardinals team. And their defense is playing so well that they had Kyler completely flustered and making all kinds of mistakes he doesn't make and throwing the ball into the dirt and taking sacks. And I don't know. I don't know if we can discount the Seahawks anymore in that division. They're in first place, and they're playing good complementary football.
They've been really good on third down. So that keeps you on the field, that wears down defense, and it breaks the will. They talk about the most important things for a quarterback are third downs and 2-minute drill. And if you're doing well in those 2 areas, your quarterback play is excellent. And
they
so they're
also
at a
have,
point where their quarterback play hasn't been excellent all year, but there are moments where it is excellent.
I also don't think there's any team that has a two-headed monster at running back like the Seahawks do. I mean, Charbonnet has been playing maybe better than anybody right now, other
Yeah,
than maybe
he's
Saquon.
awesome. But I still think the Lions do, but
Well, yeah, that's true. Lions and Seahawks.
they're in that ballpark with running the ball.
So next game was just an unbelievable game to watch. You had the Rams were blowing the Bills out. The Bills, for some reason, their defense did not come to play. And Nakua and Cooper Kupp and Stafford had a great game, and all this stuff was happening. Well, then Superman puts on his cape for the Bills and puts them on his back and has this incredible explosive fourth quarter. Looks like he's in position to tie it up, and they missed the 2-point conversion to tie it. And it was just one of those crazy, crazy games that there are not many quarterbacks that could have brought their team back the way that Josh Allen did. So what do you take from this game? I mean, obviously the Rams are really good, and they're going to give the Seahawks a run. The Bills have been playing great, and all of a sudden their defense went flat. But
my biggest takeaway was how ineffective both defenses were.
yeah,
they just couldn't stop the other team, and Stafford had an excellent game, and Allen looked excellent as well. So, but some of that was just defense was off. Both defenses were off.
This was very
Nakua was the best player on the field, in my opinion. And I think he was so athletic. I mean, that was about the best I've seen him look at any point in his career.
That's true.
He had a bunch of games like this last year, but this was not anything shy of what he did last year. It was awesome.
Agreed. The next one we got, the 49ers beat the Bears pretty handily. The Bears had the worst first half in 21 years. They had 4 total yards of offense.
Yep.
In the first half. And the wheels have completely come off. Usually with an interim coach, you get a little bit of a bump, but they have not gotten it. And the 49ers really felt like after a couple of disappointing losses that they needed a get-right game, and they really got it in this game. So any thoughts about this one?
Defense played well for the Niners. They had 7 sacks, a fumble recovery, and at halftime it was 319 yards of offense for San Fran and 4 for Chicago. I know you just said that, but 319 to 4.
Incredible.
I mean, that's how do you even go into the locker room, look at each other, you know?
Right. Incredible.
4 yards.
All right, let's go to the next game. We've got Chargers and Chiefs. A lot of people believe the Chiefs for about the 10th week in a row got incredibly lucky in this game. They just, I don't know how fortunate they can be week to week. This time they kick a field goal. It hits the upright and banks in for a win, 19-17. Really tough fought game. Both defenses played really well. Chiefs find a way to get it done again. So I don't know. Is it luck or is it just that they're that good? I don't know. Your thoughts?
They're very fortunate, but I think when you have a good coach, great quarterback, you're going to get lucky more than other teams. So
yeah,
they're prepared for those big moments. They're built to hang tight in these games. They're not blowing anyone out this year, but they are hanging tight, and then they get it done in the fourth quarter. We've seen it enough times now to where it's not really luck. You can't say that because luck would be it happened once or twice.
I don't think it's luck.
This is happening 7 out of 9 times, so it's not luck. It's just they're built for these close games and winning in the last minute and a half with Patrick Mahomes.
Well, there is some luck involved because, they could have field goals sail left instead of hitting the crossbar and going across, or, in a situation where they block a field goal to win or block a punt to win. I don't know. It's not complete luck, but they're certainly getting fortunate. I mean, they're having the ball bounce their way. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Sitting at 12-1. Chargers still really, really good team. Solid playoff team, in my opinion. This felt like a playoff game. It felt like 2 really good coaches, 2 really good defenses, and 2 solid quarterbacks playing a really solid game. So Chiefs get it done again. Let's go to the next one, which is the Bengals and Cowboys. This was a great game, too. One on a walk-off Jamar Chase touchdown, who had
That was crazy.
maybe the game of the year. He had me 47 fantasy points. And
That was the
Bengals,
craziest ending that I've seen this year.
insane. It was absolutely insane. And I mean, Burrow continues his almost MVP-like performances this year, and he had just been getting unlucky after unlucky. Unlike the Chiefs, they were doing the opposite every week. Finally get a win on the road in Cowboy Stadium. What were your thoughts about this one?
Well, I think Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in football. And he's willing this team to some victories that really, it's such a weak roster. It's such a not a very good team at all that they would have a lot fewer wins if it weren't for the Burrow Chase connection. This game was crazy. There was a punt at the end. The Bengals were punting the ball, and they had it blocked. And it went up in the air and kind of bounced around, and it bounced up and went off a Cowboy's arms
Right.
as he was trying to wrap it up. And it went into a Bengals arms downfield. And then they ran for it and got tackled. And it was a complete disaster for the Cowboys because
what's interesting is
blocked
the
the punt.
Cowboys have had a bad year, but they've actually had really good special teams play with Turpin and all those guys. Turpin's been probably the best returner in the league this year, and
He's so fast. It's insane.
that was so unusual for them to make such a dumb blunder like that.
It was such a freak play that the ball ended up getting into the Bengals' hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the next play, Burrow hits Chase and he runs into the end zone. It was wild, and for the win.
That's right.
When you block a punt, it's supposed to change completely the fortunes of the team that got their punt blocked. It's not supposed to help them.
Well, I was very happy about this one, obviously. I was really happy both for the Bengals, who've been kind of getting shafted week after week, and then obviously not a big fan of the Cowboys. So, and obviously my fantasy team was very happy with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, both of whom are on my team.
Well, my fantasy team was going against your fantasy team, so I was very unhappy.
I know you were.
But in general, I was happy. I like Burrow.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of the Cowboys, so I was very happy that the Bengals got a win, and they're staying on a somewhat of a winning path, which is very difficult to imagine with this bad of a defense. And I'm happy for Burrow and Chase. They're doing everything they possibly can.
So you think Burrow's the best quarterback in football this year?
Yes.
Do you think Jamar Chase is the best receiver in football this year?
Yes.
Okay. I do too.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think Jefferson is second.
So what about Sam Darnold? I mean, what else can we say about this guy? They keep winning. They keep winning. He's having these kinds of games. 347 yards, 5 touchdowns, almost a perfect QBR. They're paying him $11 million this year.
Yeah, he's a steal.
And they're going to have to pay him. We already talked about this, about them franchise tagging him. But, I mean, is there anything else more he could be doing in this offense?
They just have a really nice squad, a really nice roster. Their defense is awesome. It's coached by a really good defensive coordinator.
I like O'Donnell, too. He's a great coach.
O'Donnell's a great head coach and offensive mind for the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Darnold is steady. He's got a real good arm. He has a really nice supporting cast. And they have a balanced offense. They can run the ball. They just have a really good team. I think they're a little underrated, to be honest.
He's playing the best football of his career.
And Darnold is playing lights out because he has good coaching. And their defense is solid, so it's real hard to handle them right now because
I think you franchise tag him, you pay the $41 million, you let JJ McCarthy get a little bit of playing time next year, and you see where you are. That's what I would do. I wouldn't commit long term.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't let him go either. So
no, you got to keep him. He's steady and he's solid and he's good. He knows the offense. He's a steady hand. You have JJ McCarthy. This year is a lost year. So next year he can be on the bench, and then hopefully he can take over for Darnold the year after that.
So interestingly enough, this next one here is Young better than Stroud. This is not something I ever thought I would hear after last season, where CJ Stroud was the rookie of the year and Bryce Young, they were talking about cutting him after 1 year. And all of a sudden, he's got better numbers than CJ Stroud, and he's playing better than CJ Stroud right now. So the question is it legitimate to ask this question?
No, it's not. But I was telling you not to give up on Bryce Young yet because I felt like he had been in a bad situation, and it was a bad deal for him. Stroud was put in a nice situation. He was on a team that was running the ball well. They had beefed up their offensive line. They had gotten incredible defensive draft picks, and he was just in a nice situation. He's in sort of a sophomore slump, I think. He's dealing with a little bit of injuries. His team's a little banged up. They're not great this year. They're just
So,
decent.
so can we say that Stroud's team has regressed a little bit? And can we also say Bryce Young got the right coach, who's a quarterback whisperer?
Yes.
Canales.
This is what I was telling you is he needed time to be on the bench where the coaches could get a hold of him and teach him and stay with him and invest in him. And then, I can't remember which coach. I think it was Rex Ryan or something. I might have the wrong coach, but it was one of those ex-coaches that said, hey, I've seen him win the national championship with Alabama. So I know he can win big games.
For sure.
It's just he's not in the right situation at this time. And so keeping him out there is failing him, and so I think he has absolutely the right situation and the right coaching.
Although reality is he just outdueled Jalen Hurts. that catch should have been made. He just outdueled.
Well, I think the reality is coming home on Jalen Hurts is that he's not a great quarterback in terms of pocket passing. He's just not. And so he never has been.
Yeah.
And so when they paid him all that money, that was kind of a mistake.
Right.
He's great when he's running the ball, throwing sometimes, and handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley. That's why the Eagles have magic this year.
Right.
Is Barkley's running like a madman, almost like a league MVP. Hurts is running a lot more. And then when he's not running, the throws are open because of single coverage because they're doing 8 and 9 men in a box.
Well, the fact that they're even asking this question, is Young better than Stroud? The fact that it's even out there in the ether, as a Panther fan, this gets me really excited because that tells me that Young is starting to turn the corner. He's not there yet.
This is overreaction Monday stuff, but
he's starting to turn the corner.
I was telling you that Young is worth hanging on to and investing in and letting him develop him, take the pressure off him by putting him on the bench. Benching him is not doing what you did to Daniel Jones, which is let's get him out of town. That was a huge mistake. They should have benched Jones and said, you very well might still be our guy, but we want you to sit and watch for a little bit.
Let's let you watch Andy Dalton for a couple weeks and learn.
Yes. That's what he needed. He needed to take a deep breath and a step backwards and see everything, and then now come in. And by the way, they've also simplified the offense. Canales has done a really nice job of simplifying the offense.
That's right.
So, Bryce Young's running for first downs and scrambling to keep plays alive and doing.
Did you notice he's smiling a lot more and he's laughing a lot more?
He's having fun.
He's having fun. Yeah.
That's good coaching.
Yeah, that's right.
What's happening with Dave Canales? He felt we got to pull him out now, sit him down, and then everyone's like, trade him. And Canales is like, nope, he's our guy, but we need to invest in him a little more before we put him back out there. That was really smart coaching. I was actually saying that at the time, but it doesn't matter about that. The point is there was an obvious way to handle Bryce Young, and he's being handled perfectly.
That's right. And
Chuba Hubbard having the year he's having is not hurting Bryce Young at all.
Very true. All right, let's go to our NFL memes segment. Some good ones this week. The first one is, this is the Super Bowl everyone wants, Bills and Lions. And somehow this is the Super Bowl we're going to get, Chiefs and Eagles.
That's probably right.
What do you think of that?
It is what it is. It's probably right.
I don't know. I'm still picking the Lions to go.
Chiefs are going to block an extra point to go to the championship game.
To win 31-30 over Josh Allen.
Yeah.
We'll see. This one was pretty amazing to me. You're talking about, this is one play before the first half was over.
Yeah.
310 yards to 2 yards. So has there ever been a more dominating half in NFL football, or a more dismal?
That's one of the most dominating halves you're ever going to see.
And how do you explain this with Caleb Williams and all those weapons? How in the world is this possible?
They have a dysfunctional organization.
Huh. You realize they were sitting at 4-2.
Yeah, that was smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. Now, this was one of the more pathetic performances in NFL history for sure. This one's pretty funny. Joe Burrow dressed like a 90s movie theater carpet. So how do you explain this guy's attire, man? I mean,
he's just got a big personality.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, he's
It's
crazy.
just like nobody would ever dress like this under any circumstances.
He's just a colorful character.
A 90s movie theater carpet.
Yeah.
I love it. So funny. This one's pretty good. So in terms of the election, this is the CNN projecting now that Jerry Jones is now the worst GM in football with 538 electoral votes.
Yeah, he's terrible.
And you know, Dad always says, because Dad is a Redskins/Commanders fan and he hates the Cowboys, and he always says all the time that he hopes Jerry Jones stays on as the GM for the Cowboys. Very much so.
I can see why.
The next one is Kansas City Chiefs. Oh boy, time to finally watch the Chiefs lose. It's happening. These are not the same Chiefs. And then how do they just win that?
Exactly.
It's true. It's like every game and every season, this is how everyone feels. And yeah, they just win. So what's your
coaching?
Is it coaching?
Yeah, it's the coaching.
Defense?
The coach knows how to drive the other team crazy, feel them out, stay close,
play good defense, get sacks,
play good defense, keep it low, and then just do some crazy
run the ball
at the end of the game to win by 3 or 2.
Yeah, it's like lulling your opponent into a sleep and then pull it off at the end.
Bank the field goal. Anyone out.
Yeah, it is. This is how people feel about the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. This one's pretty funny. Dan Campbell. It's a big ball.
Yeah.
Is that funny?
Yeah.
But I mean, is this good in playoffs though? Like, I don't know. I think the players love it, but are you worried about him in those really?
I think he'll get into the playoffs, but then you're gonna have a horrifying loss.
Are you worried about him in those huge situations in the NFC Championship game where he goes for it at the wrong time?
Yeah.
You know, but this is pretty funny. Dan Campbell with the steel balls. This one's pretty funny. You got the NFC North. You have 3 teams that are dominant, and then you have the Bears. That was pretty amusing there. Pretty good one. All right, Ravi, I'm going to hand it to you, man. This is the mailbag and news segment. What you got for us this week?
Okay, well, great picture there, of course. Before we get to that, there's a couple news headlines that I wanted to touch on. It was kind of funny. There was a plane flying around the MetLife Stadium. Did you hear about this?
No, what was it?
It was. It said, "Mr. Mara, enough. Please fix this dumpster fire." It was flying all around the stadium.
Oh, that's great.
Somebody hired the plane to fly that message. Lane Kiffin's gone on record and thinks that the transfer portal opening before bowl week is insane, and it's a dumb system, he says. And he's right. I think letting players transfer out and they have a bowl game still does not make sense.
Doesn't make sense at all. You end up having second.
The season should end, and then the transfer portal should open.
Absolutely agreed. We talked about this with Jackson on the program with him. Even he was in agreement with that. It should end, and then it opens up. You have a window that everyone understands.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
A couple other things. UNC women won the College Cup. Good for them. They beat Wake Forest 1-0. And the LA Galaxy won the MLS championship. So that's
yes. Congrats to the Galaxy. Congrats to the UNC women.
Yeah, that was great. They just came out with news that they're going to hold the first NFL game in Berlin next year.
Okay. Nice.
So that's cool. They've done Frankfurt and Munich, but not Berlin so far.
Okay. Very good.
And Duke had its quarterback transfer out, Malik Murphy.
Okay.
And then today they had their quarterback transfer in, Dorian Mensah from Tulane. So
Interesting. Okay.
Tulane just played in their championship game.
Interesting. Okay.
So they're going to have Dorian Mensah as their quarterback next year. So Duke is actually really doing well in the transfer portal.
Oh, that's great.
One final thing there's going to be a World Cup in 2030 that is happening in 6 countries at the same time, which is pretty wild. 2030. It's going to be in Morocco, Portugal, Spain, and 3 other unnamed South American countries.
Wow. Huh.
So games in Morocco, Portugal, Spain, and 3 South American countries all at the same time. So that's wild. And then the next World Cup after that in 2034 is going to be in Saudi Arabia. So that's going to be interesting.
Very cool.
So that's some news from the week.
I do have one big breaking news one for you.
What's that?
I did just look it up. We mentioned Bill Belichick early in the program, but we weren't sure if he was going to sign. Well, apparently he just signed the contract. He is the new coach of the UNC Tar Heels. So how?
Yeah, we kind of knew it was coming, but it wasn't signed yet. So there you go.
He signed a 4-year contract, and then his son is going to be assistant head coach. So pretty big deal there. How do you think he's going to do in the ACC?
How do I think they'll do?
Yeah, how do you think the Belichicks will do?
Hard to say. On the one hand, it's an attractive thing for your son to be able to have a pipeline to the NFL and all the resources and the number one college brand and all that stuff. On the other, lack of experience in the college level, no idea how he'll do in the portal or what's it like to have Belichick roll into your living room.
I think he's going to do pretty good. I think that because college football has basically become a semi-pro league, that gives him the ability to do it. I don't think he could have done it 5 years ago, but I think he's just going to treat it like a business, like he does the Patriots. He's going to just treat it like a pro league, and I think he'll do pretty good. We'll see.
We shall see. Cool. Well, on to the mailbag. First one is, this series keeps getting better. Can't wait for part 3. That's talking about the Strange Sports episode 2 that we just released last week.
Oh, super cool.
What are your thoughts on that? That was at Arthur.
Hey, thanks, Arthur, very much. We had so much fun putting the first 2 together and researching all the great sports and bringing them to you guys. So glad you enjoyed it.
That was a lot of fun to put together. And obviously, we had so many sports, we couldn't cover them all. We've already started on part 3, so that's cool. Next this is why I love this channel. Always something new and unique. So that was also from the Strange Sports.
Oh, very cool.
At Shivansh.
Thank you, Shivansh, and we're glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, it's something we enjoy doing. Obviously, we do a lot of football, basketball, baseball, but we love doing kind of those programs that are a little bit different sometimes. So thank you.
We've talked many times about how we started all this podcast and how we used to have these conversations on the way to work every day in our car, and why not just put this into a podcast? And then people started watching. It was really fun for us. But we do like to challenge ourselves sometimes to see kind of where the limits on our content are, and we certainly enjoy the Strange Sports.
Mm-hmm.
We think that it's really fascinating look into human beings and the way they process their surroundings and their environment and what they have to work with, turning something into a ball or to a game.
It's true. And you can see this picture behind Robbie. It was one of the Strange Sports from last episode. So if you guys haven't watched it yet, I'll put a link down below. Definitely check it out. Strange Sports Part 2. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to do. Part 3 is coming soon. Third, you guys captured the chaos of this weekend perfectly. At Robert. And that was from our last weekend review.
Oh, very good. Thank you so
Mhm.
much, Robert, for watching. Hopefully you're watching
And that
tonight.
was a crazy weekend with all those championship games, deciding who's in, who's out. Miami's out, Alabama's out, you know.
There's all those upset games that weekend. Yeah, that was great. Fantastic.
And then last, the passion in football is great, but flag planting is crossing a line. Let's make the game about respect and competition, not controversy. At Dagobert.
Could not agree more. I think that if you keep the sport at a high level, you keep it respectful of your opponent, you shake hands at the middle of the field, you tip your hat if you lose, you tip your hat if you win, and you walk off and you celebrate with your fans. That's the way it should be. This stuff about trying to show each other up at the middle field, especially on someone else's turf, that's just not the way to do it. Nothing classy about it.
Yeah, agreed. It's unnecessary. So that's my mailbag this week.
Yeah, that was a good
Great,
one.
great
Thanks.
pick.
Absolutely.
It was a great week in sports.
It was, man. I just enjoyed those games so much, and we have a lot of great ones coming up very soon. Kicking off here in about 2 weeks, and on the NFL side, it's just heating up more and more ramifications to every single game we have within all the different divisions. So you have some teams that are emerging, and you have some teams that are fading, and people are starting to really realize who the real contenders are, at least from my perspective. So, any other thoughts wrapping up this week?
No, just this was a particularly fun week. Putting together some episodes, working on some things for the future. A lot of amazing sports, and seeing where this 12-team playoff is headed and how we built this thing, and to see it kind of come into a reality, and just so many amazing sporting events that we watched, both at college and pro level, and then all the soccer and other things. It was just a really fun week. It was good.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, guys, like this video, drop us a comment, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and get friends to subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of fantastic stuff coming your way, and we want to make sure you guys are a part of it. So make sure you do that for us. And we're real excited to see what's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. And as you're leading into Christmas, I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday if we don't talk to you before then. And
Thank you for joining us.
Fantastic Christmas. And thanks again. We'll see you next time on the Sports
Keep those
Guys.
comments coming.
Sounds good.